This is Tom with Creepy Stir Fry, where we look at the odd, mystical, and supernatural. Today, I'll be discussing mysterious ape men from around the world. So let's get started. Could a creature like Bigfoot, Yeti, Yowie exist today? Or like most species throughout history, could they have lived at one time and died off? We know through legitimate science that massive upright-haired creatures like Gigantopithecus roamed the earth at one time. In this video, I'll be going through 10 different types of mysterious ape men around the world, along with their backstory, sightings, and the science to back up the claim, do they exist? Around the world, people tell of mysterious beasts that are part human, part ape. Typically large, hairy creatures that walk on two legs but always seem to stay just out of sight. Now we know there are large primates that exist today and that can walk bipedally, and you only have to go back to the 20th century for several groundbreaking discoveries. The bonobos of the forests of Congo and the mountain gorilla of East Central Africa, both of whom we share about 98% of our DNA with. But what if there are creatures who exist that share more of our traits? Not quite human, not quite beast. Creatures that hint at our other side. And that was what we're going to discuss today. So let's get started. Let's start with a lesser known creature, the Almas. According to legend, Almas resided in the mountains of Central Asia, specifically in the Altai Mountains and the Tian Shan ranges. Back in the 14th century, German traveler Johann Schiltberg documented in the Tian Shan Mountains themselves lived a wild people who have nothing in common with other human beings. A pelt covers the entire body of these creatures. They run around in the hills like animals and eat foliage and grass and whatever else they can find. Now, is he referring directly to the Almas? I'm skeptical. But to add on to the legend, there is a very bizarre story of an encounter of a man and a female Almas. According to Mongolian legend, a man traveled through the mountains, had a particular encounter with a female Alma. Eventually, the pair had a son. The boy proved so intelligent that he was accepted to study at a prestigious monastery where he went on to become a noted scholar. Whether there is any merit to stories like this remains a mystery. Nonetheless, they are fascinating, and at the very least, they're entertaining. All right, Bigfoot. The crown jewel of cryptozoology, the North American Bigfoot. For better or for worse, Bigfoot became a household name during the 1960s when the Patterson-Gimlin video came out and never looked back. Since then, there have been comedies, movies, documentaries, reality TV shows based off this elusive creature. Most of these do not lend any credence to the proof of Bigfoot existing today, but some programs are more intriguing than others. Take Finding Bigfoot, a popular reality show on Animal Planet, which lasted for a whopping 12 seasons. I, for one, found some of these episodes entertaining, but there have been strong evidence from people connected to the industry that sounds are deliberately made in the areas of the Bigfoot hunters to enhance the show. If this is true, which I believe it is, they automatically get little to no credence. The show I find the most intriguing has to be Survivor Man Bigfoot. Les Stroud, the accredited survival expert who has a knack for going into remote areas by himself and surviving for days on end. Oh, and some say even created the selfie. Decided to dedicate a season to Bigfoot after hearing what sounded like primate sounds when he was filming an episode of Survivor Man in Alaska. Honestly, I really enjoy his shows, and he is the real deal when it comes to survival. He worked with Todd Standing, a controversial figure in the Bigfoot community, which is saying a lot. Some of his footage is incredible, if real. Not grainy or in the distance, his footage leaves one of two conclusions. Either he has some of the best Bigfoot evidence and undeniable proof that they exist, or he is a complete and absolute fraud. There is no other option. But I do like the show that's in that season is one of my guilty pleasures. Les admits if nothing happened while they were out researching Bigfoot, then nothing happened. But at times, some things did happen, and I enjoyed every minute of the season. And what put the season over the top for me is the stunningly beautiful remote places they go to find evidence. Outside of film and numerous eyewitness accounts, there are some interesting petroglyphs depicting large, upright, hairy figures, and to this day, some Native American tribes who do not even question the legitimacy of Bigfoot living among us. They just see it as fact. Not only because of stories passed down through the generations, but also through first-hand knowledge of the creature. Chemisett. Next on our list is the chemisett, who supposedly exists in a country with over 20 different primate species, Kenya. And if you Google an image of this creature, you get some very odd results. Located in the east central Kenyan forests, witnesses claim the chemisett resembles more of a hyena or a bear and is commonly referred to as the Nandi bear after a Kenyan tribe that lives in its reported range. And the Nandi people, well, they claim the creature is an enormous, ferocious primate that enjoys eating the brains of his victims. There have been other assumptions to the existence of Chemicet. One is being a descendant of the Exist Calictopher, a massive herbivore who once roamed the area millions of years ago. Another assumption is gorillas, who are passing across the continent. But the most likely explanation is misidentified hyenas, specifically the spotted hyena, which are large and have a vaguely bear-like build. Hibigan. For the next creature on our list, we will discuss the Japanese version of the North American Bigfoot, Hibigan. According to legend, the Hibigan only stands 5 feet tall, yet has double the foot size of the average human. Said to live on Mount Hiba in the Hiroshima Prefecture, the Hibigan is a supposed quiet beast, reddish brown or black, that has a unique stench that is said to smell like decomposing flesh. Being more ape-like than the Sasquatch, it is often described as looking like a gorilla or a giant monkey, going back and forth from walking bipedally to switching to all fours. Sightings of the Hibigan lasted from 1970 to 1982, with practically no reliable reports after this time. Many of the sightings occurred in the early 1970s. With the increase in media coverage, some rural residents of the Mount Hiba area became uneasy about a strange animal being seen in the forest. As sightings continued, area residents became so uneasy that the country known as the Seijo Shobora set up a department to deal with the phenomena. Patrols were launched in the area to search for whatever was causing the reports, and a university in Japan investigated the area in 1972 to try to find physical evidence. No evidence turned up by the university. Mapinguari. South America isn't the continent that comes to mind when I think of ape-man creatures. But next on our list is the Mapinguari from central Brazil. And man, the images of this supposed beast are weird. Prior to 1933, traditional folklore described it as a former human shaman turned into a hairy humanoid cyclops. This version is often said to have a gaping mouth on his abdomen with his feet turned backwards. And yep, those backward feet, those help confuse those who are tracking it. In the second half of the 20th century, people speculated the Mapinguari might be an unknown primate or even a modern-day sighting of a giant sloth. A 2023 study found giant sloth bones modified into primordial pendants, which suggests early humans did live among giant sloths, which may have served as an inspiration for the Mapinguari. Several sightings occurred near an area called the Cave of the Mapinguari. In one incident, a Karatana man named Milwaukee was out hunting when he saw what he believed to be a giant anteater due to its claws. But when the animal stood up, it was taller than a man. Milwaukee fled, pursued by the animal, and hid himself under a tree, which the animal attempted to uproot. In one of the most recent, albeit outrageous encounters, a group of acai berry pickers in Brazil's Sumana forest reserves in the Japim River reported seeing a cyclopean Mapinguari in September of 2014. While in a remote area of forest 5 hours away from the nearest village, the harvester herder cried. I began to imitate the cry when I realized the sound was coming to us. That's when we started to hear a loud and intermittent crash. At that moment, a creature of dark color appeared about 2 meters high with only one reddish eye like flames. The men fled back to the river to spend the night in their tent, but the creature appeared again, and they returned to their village in their canoe during the night, abandoning their equipment. The way I see it, if there is an area with a large bipedal creature that could thrive with little to no interaction with people and have abundant food source, it would be the Amazon rainforest. The Amazon is home to some massive animals, and their range can be extended deep into the forest. Is the Mapinguari another case of misidentification, or could they be living deep within the dense forest? Orang Pendek. Okay, let's look at the Orang Pendek, who supposedly lives in some of the most densely forested areas of Sumatra and Indonesia. Orang Pendek means short person in Indonesian, and like the Mapinguari we just discussed, the Orang Pendek has backwards pointed feet to confuse anyone tracking them. If the Orang Pendek does exist, it sure has company. The forests of Indonesia are packed with variously types of parent primates, most notably the orangutan, who has a standing height of 4 to 5 feet and can weigh anywhere from 80 to 175 pounds. The difference, Orang Pendek is claimed to live primarily on the ground, while the orangutan spends nearly entire lives in trees. The physical description of both are very similar, and I'm sure many of the sightings, especially from the early Dutch settlers who are reported sightings, were merely misidentifications. But here's where it gets really odd. Some theories suggest those sightings could be from a hominid or hobbit-like creature called Suil, who are said to be a race of wild hominids living in the jungles of Java in Indonesia. Several writings from the 14th century explorers to Java region talk about pygmy men, who were shaggy, dwell in the woods, and could even perform functionings like harvesting corn. And it was written that although they seem to have some properties of men, they are merely of the character of apes. Circling back to the orangutangic, there is limited scientific evidence to support their existence, with most likely explanation of orangutans. However, investigations are ongoing in the hopes of uncovering conclusive evidence of this mysterious creature. Wild men in Borneo. This segues perfectly to the wild men of Borneo. The island of Borneo is the third largest island in the world. It is shared between three countries: Indonesia, Malaysia, and Brunei. Now, there isn't much information about the wild men of Borneo, but what I could find, all signs pointed to orangutans, who are native to the island. Even if you search the term wild men of Borneo on Wikipedia, you'll end up on a page that details a pair of exceptionally strong dwarf brothers associated with P.T. Barnum. I'll leave it at that. Yeren. Next, let's explore the cryptid ape men who reportedly inhabits the remote mountainous region of Hubei Province, China. Sightings of hairy men have remained constant since the Warring States period circa 340 BCE through the Tang Dynasty, before solidifying into the modern legend of the Yeren. Generally, they are described as savage, strong, and fast-moving, living in mountain caves and descending only to raid villages in search of food or women. Some of the stories told in antiquity of these hairy wild men are pretty graphic. People being eaten, women raped, and even men being slung over the backs of these wild beasts to be carried up into the mountains to be wed. And this, documented in the 9th century, if you drink the blood of Fifi, nicknamed for the Yeren, you will be able to see ghosts. Its upper lip always covers its head. Its shape is like that of an ape. It uses human speech, but it sounds like a bird. It can foretell life and death. Its blood can dye things dark purple, and its hair can be used to make wigs. Legend has it that its heels face backwards. Hunters say that it has no knees. Let's fast forward to more current times. After the Mao era ended in 1976, which highly restricted superstitious type beliefs, there were Yeren expeditions led by military personnel, zoologists, biologists, and photographers on behalf of the Chinese Academy of Sciences. There was even a cash reward for a Yeren body offered by famous Chinese paleoanthropologists. All this hit a fever pitch in the 1980s, with entire books about the Yeren being published, and a substantial collection of such literature has since amassed. There was even an expedition in the 1980s that garnered audiences upward of 400,000 people. But after all expeditions failed to turn up convincing evidence, scientific interest waned, as did general interest of the beast. The alleged bodies, hairs, and footprints came from known animals, including humans. Yeti. Next, the abominable snowman of Tibet. Only second to Bigfoot in terms of popularity, the Yeti is said to live in the Himalayan mountain range, most notably in the regions of Tibet, Nepal, and Bhutan. Beliefs in the creature spans back to the pre-Buddhist beliefs. The Lepcha people, who still exist today, worship the glacier being as a god of the hunt. The Yeti was adopted into Tibetan Buddhism, where it is considered a non-human animal. Monasteries in the region have collected artifacts throughout the years, including teeth, hair, skulls, and bones. Some of these are held at the Smithsonian. Modern tests concluded linked most of the samples to brown bears, and a few to black bears, and even a dog. The samples gave scientists some valuable information about the bears in the region, which indicated that the Himalayan subspecies was likely the first to diverge from the ancestral brown bear about 650,000 years ago. Staying on the topic of bears, back in 2013, a British geneticist tested hair samples found in Bhutan about a decade earlier. He said that the DNA from the samples was 100% match with the samples of an ancient polar bear jawbone found in Norway, dating back between 400 and 120,000 years ago. Could the early stories of the Yeti just be misidentification of massive polar bears that once roamed the area? Now, for a personal story. Back in 2015, I went on a remote hiking trip with a friend to Bhutan. We went deep into the Jigme Dorje National Park, where we trekked all the way up to the Masang Kang, which borders Tibet. We had a guide, cook, and help her with us, as is required by their government. While we were camping one night, the cook felt very uneasy about the area we were staying. He didn't know much English, so our guide had to interpret. What the guy said to me is he was hiking not too far from the area we were camping and came across a cave. The cave had an overwhelming stench to it. He went deeper into the cave and saw a mound of brush in the corner with a huge indentation in it. While he was looking around, he saw something in the corner of his eye that was large, bigger than him, just staring at him. He ran out in a panic and never came back. He swears it was a Yeti, but there is no way to prove his story. But what I will say is he looked absolutely terrified when he described that story. Yowie. Okay, the last on our list is the Yowie of Australia. There have been a lot of sightings, and interestingly, they come from different regions, including Queensland, New South Wales, and Victoria. And here's the thing, there aren't any bears in Australia that would trigger a misidentification like we've seen with other ape men. The largest land animal in Australia is the red kangaroo, which can grow up to 6 feet tall and weigh about 200 pounds. But they have a very distinct look, and I don't see misidentifications like you would see with a grizzly bear or with a black bear. However, some people speculate the Yowie could be some kind of bipedal marsupial, like the extinct elusive. As far as research, there is a group called Australian Yowie Research, who has some interesting images and videos on their website and social media pages. Their founder, Dean Harrison, had an encounter back in 1997 while going for a run in a suburban area fringed by rainforests. He described turning to see a huge 7-foot silhouette standing on 2 feet and covering in dark hair, watching him before running back into the bushes. So, what's the verdict? If any of the videos definitively depicting a large bipedal hairy creature are in fact true, that would completely blow the top off the scientific field. And I even find some of the ancient petroglyphs intriguing. But we still don't have a body, and all the artifacts collected until now have been debunked. We know massive primates like Gigantopithecus existed, and a part of me really does believe a Bigfoot-like creature did exist at one time. But you would think with all the trail cams, along with people spread out all over the world, we would have better evidence up to this point. But even if they do not exist today, I really do love the research. I love the heretical nature of cryptozoology. And if there is still mystery out there, just look how unexplored the deep sea is. For all the people out there who love this topic and spend time in nature trying to find evidence, keep doing what you're doing. Even if you don't find what you're looking for, at least you get to go out and see the beauty and wonder of our natural world. And that is our video for today. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. Cheers.